Hello, welcome. Thanks for making this event and traveling here and coming to this telco panel discussion. We're very excited with some of the leaders that we have that we work with, our customers that are going to talk about their journey. This session is around imagining telco. What can you do with technology, data and AI, and what are you doing to go and help your customers be successful with data? And so with the folks that are here, I know a lot of you folks are working with Databricks and working with other technology around data and AI, and we're going to get to hear from some of our customers and some of the leaders that are going to provide some of their journeys and what they're doing today to be successful around data and AI. So we'll start off with some introductions. I'm Brady Bill, client executive that covers AT&T, one of the client executives. So I have the privilege to introduce some of my clients that I work with every day. But we'll start with Emma. Emma Hartwell is part of Optus, VP of Data. And also we have Adam Hudson, which is with Plume, VP of Data and AI. And then we have Russell Marks, which is VP of Fraud, deals with a lot of data and AI. And then Mark Austin, Dr. Mark Austin, with AT&T, and Mark is a data science leader. So thank you for joining. Look forward to this. We also have Navash Pilla, and she runs our telco industry for Databricks. Thank you.
Thank you, Brady, for the great intro, and a huge thank you to all of our customers for this practical and insightful discussion. We have a few questions, and they've been based on the things that we hear most from all of our customers around the world. And of course, this session is titled Telco Reimagined. And the reason for that is because we know that all of our telecom customers are rethinking how they approach data and AI, and they are certainly reimagining customer experiences, growing revenue, managing networks, and definitely protecting the telco from cyber and fraud issues. So thank you so much for joining us. We're very excited to have you here. The one question we would love to start with is, what got you started on this journey of data and AI, in particular with Databricks? And what were some of the problems that you were trying to solve in your respective businesses? So Emma, if okay, it would be great to start with you. Now, I'm not sure how much our global audience would know about Optus, so if you could perhaps just provide some insight on who Optus is, where they're located, that would be fantastic.
So I'll start with Optus. So Optus is one of the telecommunications companies in Australia. So Australia is pretty much at least from a big player perspective, there's 3 telcos. Telstra is kind of ex-government owned, is the biggest telco in Australia. Optus is number 2. And then we've got what is now TPG as number 3. So Optus is kind of in the middle there. So challenging market to operate in. Probably the other thing I'll say about Australia from a telco perspective, geographically, pretty much same size as the US, but which are like the population's about a 20th of the size. So it adds a lot of complexity into the market. So a little bit about Optus. So I think your question about where we started. So Optus was in a position probably a couple of years ago, maybe a little bit longer than that, where we had a very old on-prem legacy data lake. In addition to that, we had an even older legacy on-prem data warehouse. And neither of them were kind of meeting the business needs that we had at the time, let alone what we kind of believed we were going to need in the future. And so that really kind of kicked off a catalyst of really looking at how we modernized our data architecture as well as the data platforms that we were working on. And that's kind of kicked off our journey towards Databricks, and we have Databricks on Azure. And there were really 4 main things that we were trying to solve for. The first was we had a lot of data platforms, so we wanted to consolidate them into one single unified platform, just to kind of reduce the overhead of managing them. The second was just to uplift our control environment. So, moving onto platforms that kind of had inherent controls around encryption, high availability, Unity catalog, and the ability to manage our data and the governance around that was a big component. The third was just our day-to-day operating processing speed. Like, our latency was horrible, so how do we actually improve that? And the fourth was just speed to business outcomes. So how can we deliver more business value faster? So kind of the 4 key challenges we're addressing.
Thank you so much, Emma. Thank you. And I must say, I do appreciate like large geography, a few telcos, smaller population, very different challenges also. But thank you for sharing that. Adam, could we switch over to you? And same question, what was the catalyst that got you started and what were the problems you were looking to solve? But I know, again, from a Plume perspective, not everyone would be familiar with Plume. So if you could provide just some background insights, that would be great.
Great. First off, thank you for having us out here, and I guess thank you all for attending the session. I know you guys want to learn about what we're doing. Happy to tell our story. And to tell the story of Plume, let me just talk a bit about who we are. So we're a managed Wi-Fi services company, first and foremost, which in plain English, that means that we help ISPs offer their subscribers like awesome Wi-Fi and connectivity services by providing them firmware and back-end software to do that. We have been on a journey for years where the tools that we're creating for ISPs have been evolving from like data and reporting to a wall of data, which has not been very as useful anymore, to trying to provide analytics and insights. We're leaning further into that journey to say, how can we become a world-class data and analytics company for the telecom industry as well? So we're still going to be managed Wi-Fi services, but we also want to do that. And to be a world-class data and analytics company, we need to have a world-class data platform. So that's a bit of what brought us to Databricks. I mean, a lot of the things, Emma, that you said about we need high availability, we need to have great utility and connectivity of our data. I think a big thing for us that brought us to Databricks as well is the speed of innovation. There's a lot that we're trying to do as we look across the scale of our platform to be able to create new analytics, new insights, and be able to operationalize that quickly on our platform. And so I think that's where we found Databricks to be very useful for that. I think like probably a lot of us here, we're doing something with AI right now, and the Mosaic platform itself has been incredibly useful because it gives us the ability to experiment with different foundational models, figure out which ones make the most sense for particular applications. And of course that changes every week now, so we can change that every week as well on that platform. But I mean, I think that's probably a bit of the journey there while we're there.
Thank you very much. And for those of you who are not aware, Plume actually supplies a lot of the hardware for many of the telcos. After meeting with you the first time, I went back home and had a look at my Wi-Fi box to see who it was supplied by. So we may not see the brand, up front, but it's definitely one that's probably quite pervasive across many of the places we live in. So thank you for sharing that. Now, Mark, we may go to you next. I don't think AT&T needs any introduction, but please share with us. You are so progressed on your journey with Databricks. What was the catalyst that got you started, and what were some of the key challenges? Now, we know you lead the largest data science team from all the telcos, we understand globally. How were you thinking about it, and what were you looking to solve?
Yeah, so I won't start on the journey like my peer did yesterday. He started at 1876, right? He went back to Alexander Graham Bell, so I won't go back that far back. But I would say it's all about scale, and there's so many use cases. I think we have, I lost track now, 500-600 machine learning algorithms in production. But the one that kind of tells the story, since this is a journey thing, is our story on fraud. And I'm here with my peer on the business side to we'll give you the full picture today. But let me tell you a little bit about the catalyst, like what got us started on that. And the way I think about combating fraud is if we can get more data and AI and do it at scale and do it faster, we can beat the fraud guys, right? So sometimes we joke, it's like, hey, we're having our stand-up, the bad guys are probably having stand-ups as well. We gotta bring more data and AI than they do to win, right? Now, it's a huge problem, right? Because these phones are $1,000 and it's all identity fraud, right? It's people faking it out, and the customer doesn't buy the phone. They put down a little bit, sometimes put down nothing, and it's all on us. So if they steal it, it's a big problem, right? So that's how we got started. And if I go back, this is like, it seems old, right? Back in the Hadoop days, right? We could only process so much data. And Spark was this amazing thing. I could do more data, right? And fraudsters would come in different places. They come in online, they come in customer care, they come in retail. And we started off, we were rules-based. We're only on one of the channels. We could only get it. So we said to Spark, let's get Spark in there. let's process all the channels and get all the data there. And so that was like a huge thing, is just getting the data and processing to find the things. And the number is pretty astounding. I don't know all the data points, like 900 million data points we're processing today. Now, the story of this journey is since we started, I think it's something like 80% reduction in fraud, okay, from when we started, okay? So it starts out with Spark, okay? And then what's cool is the different technologies. Didn't stop with that, right? So of course, the data science team loves Databricks for machine learning, right? So processing a thing, building machine learning algorithms, ML flow, evaluating them. And it's cool, you see step functions, right? So Spark was one, now I could see the data, then get machine learning, and we started off with like first year, 5 to 10 algorithms, you see a big step function, and I think we're up to 70 machine learning algorithms just in fraud, right, alone, okay? So that was the machine learning AI next, and then it was, okay, there's some data we can't process yet, and then Databricks had Spark streaming. So we had clickstream data, right? So it's like how people are clicking around, and you find anomalies on clickstream, right? That doesn't look like a person, that looks like a bot doing that, right? So you could find that, you could process that thing there, right? And then Databricks came out. There's different personas, right? Data scientists were happy, but not everybody's a data scientist. Some people just talk SQL. So then they had SQL analytics. So now others can kind of get it. So now they can get at it there well, right? And then one of my favorite stories is the feature store. And the feature store, if you haven't got it, it's a way to serve up real-time data for machine learning. And my favorite story is, I love the word feature store. I love the store part. It's a store for storage. It's more importantly a store for shopping, okay? And I always, this one story I've had data scientists like, hey, have you gone shopping yet? I go, what do you mean, Mark? I go shopping. You go, well, have you gone to the store? He goes, well, I've been working on this problem, fraud stuff for 3 years. I'm pretty sure I've found every feature out there. I go, you sure? Why don't you go shopping? The next day, sure enough, he found something in the feature store, and all of a sudden, in between meetings, he add those features to his machine learning. I think his fraud went down his machine learning algorithm tech, and this one piece of fraud is down like 20%, right? Just in the feature store. But it doesn't stop there, and I won't go through all of this, right? But the new stuff, the Gen AI, is like another tool in the toolbox, right? And for us, what is the next thing? What's the next persona? If you don't write Spark, if you don't write SQL, what do? You talk, right? And Russell has 500 analysts, right? And not all of them write SQL. But they know how to find the bad guys, right? So this is the text to SQL asking questions of data. And this was so important for AT&T is we got to get this right. We got to unlock that. We got to make sure when you ask a question, it finds the right table, the right database, the right columns to get the answer. And that's why we competed on 2 of the big leaderboards out there, the Bird benchmark and Spider. So we're #1 in the world in that if you haven't seen it over Google and Stanford, stuff like that. So getting those answers right to unlock the other stuff. And the last thing I'll say is that agents are the next thing, right? And there's different things, the stories there too. But that's a bit of the journey in a nutshell of how we got started.
Thank you so much. And some really interesting things you raise. I mean, I spent 20 years in telecom myself. And sometimes you are so busy with your customers, you have millions of customers, you're leading thousands of people, you often don't have as much an open mind to all the new things and how they emerge. And I think as I reflect on my own career in telco, just having that curiosity, because the world is changing, there are solutions that are much better, much more secure. And that concept of having that open mind and how you go shopping, accessing the different stores, I think is a great insight. We have a few more questions that we'll come back to, on how you're continuing to progress this fraud use case. But I must say, 80% reduction. On a company that's got over 100 million subscribers, not only does that impact your efficiency, but the trust that customers have in you. I mean, I unfortunately did experience being a customer who had my SIM swapped or stolen while I was asleep. And I must say that is not a great experience, but to reduce that for your customers is where you add so much value. So thanks for sharing that with us. And Russell, now, of course, leading this from the business perspective, that would also be very interesting. What would you like to add also? And, what were some of the things that you were looking to change from the business side?
Yeah, so I think it starts with 2018. We saw the problem on the P&L, right? And so that got leadership's attention from a financial perspective. It's given us long-term funding and support, right? So we can partner with Mark's team on collaborating and driving these iterations across the years and realizing those step function improvements. So I think that sort of the long-term partnership, from my perspective, has been a huge piece of the transformation from a technology point of view. And then, from a P&L perspective, being able to work with the finance teams on seeing the improvements, realizing it, and continuing to procure the funding to continue to build out the platform from a technological perspective has really enabled us to build momentum over the years, as opposed to a start-stop mentality, which I think a lot of large enterprises struggle with from a program perspective.
Thank you for sharing that, and thanks for both being here also, because hearing the perspectives, from the data science, CIO, CDO, CTO team, and in the business function also helps us consolidate that collaboration that's so necessary, because you've got to take people on that journey. So we have a few more questions on how you took the team through in a moment, but Emma, could we go back to you and help us understand at Optus, where has the data intelligence platform enabled you best to achieve outcomes? Are there some examples of, whether it's customer experience or driving more operational efficiency that stand out from your perspective?
So from an Optus perspective, we went live on Databricks about 18 months ago. So we probably had a slightly different journey to other people. We actually started with our warehouse. We went from Teradata to Databricks Azure. And look, we've seen lots of benefits over the last 18 months, but the ones that are probably most impactful is we've seen up to 50% decrease in processing time. So, I kind of translate that to the latency and the amount and the data just getting to particularly the BI and the analytics team significantly faster than they've ever had before. And the second is in terms of the ability for the data engineers to deliver faster. So we've seen on average about 20% improvement in terms of how quickly they get pipelines through, just by kind of using the standard capabilities that are in Databricks. So they're probably the two that we've seen the most at this point in time. We're a little bit behind some of the others in terms of our data scientists, so that's only workloads that we're moving at the moment. But yeah, for our perspective, that's huge improvements.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you. So Adam, what is the role that data and AI is playing at Plume from a subscriber perspective?
Yeah, so I guess it's helpful to say I'm relatively new to the role, and I've been talking a lot with our customers really to understand what their strategy is right now on the services and the products they're offering and where Plume fits into that. And I was speaking to one executive leader of an ISP recently who said something that kind of really captured the spirit of the mood that we're in the industry, and at least from a US perspective, I believe probably for some other markets as well, which is the speed wars are over. The basis for competition now is around customer service. And when I heard that, I'm like, that's really helpful, because it tells me as a product leader, what do I need to be innovating around and what do I need to be building? So I'm talking a lot now with customer care reps, customer care leaders, and really just trying to understand, what does that troubleshooting process look like when somebody calls in? And unfortunately, it almost always starts with my internet's not working, which is not really helpful at all, but that's, in the subscriber's perspective, that's life, internet's not working. All the ISPs have different ways to kind of go about answering that question, and unfortunately, in a lot of cases, it's beholden to the skill, the experience, whether the CSR just woke up on the right side of the bed this morning. But it doesn't have to be like that, because what we have found in our data is that most of our routine tasks have very common telemetry, very common symptoms, and so we're at a point with some of the solutions we're starting to build right now that we're able to say pretty quickly, hey, looking at this, the subscriber says my internet's not working. Well, the answer over here is that it's poor RSSI over on this gateway or on this node. This is what you need to do. And so that's where we're looking at doing that. And that's great, because the challenge in customer service has always been that you can improve NPS, or you can improve operating expenses, but you can't do both, not easily. We disagree with that, and we think that the answer is through being really smart with analytics. You can start to find solutions that can actually do both by improving that experience, improving the handling time, and making something like customer care a lot more intelligent.
Thank you. That's really insightful because I often see AI as the gift that can keep giving. You know, we've heard a few examples because if you are, providing first point resolution, then it does mean that you're driving more efficiency because your customer doesn't have to call back the second or third time, which, in telco, unfortunately, customers are calling 3 times to have one issue resolved, and that in itself is going to give you the operational efficiency. So that's fantastic, thank you. Mark, could we please go back to you? The use case you shared is one of the most inspiring use cases. 80% reduction in fraud, and you're now taking that even further. How are you ensuring accuracy with Gen AI, and what are some of the practical, ideas you can share with the rest of our telecoms in terms of how you are adopting Gen AI in the space?
If you saw the keynote, what was really interesting is it's kind of all about evals, right? Evaluating things. And I was pretty impressed when I saw the agent bricks and the assistant and getting the feedback, right? So it's all about the feedback. If you didn't get the answer right, you got to get the thing, why wasn't it right? And you feed that back in. And it's almost like, if you think about RAG, or question and answer of documents, if you know the answer and it wasn't in there, you just go put it back in the document. You get it the next time, right? So that's how it continually improves. But we're, of course, being the chief data office, we're all about evals, right? It's like Gen AI is so easy today, especially with vibe coding. Almost anybody can build something, but does it work well at scale? Does it work well with the evals, right? So everything we do is a leaderboard, right? So whether it's evaluating agents or RAG or Ask Data, we do all of that stuff. So it's a big discipline. I would say Russell keeps us honest on his KPIs, because at the end of the day, it ties back to the P&L, right? So I think a combination of the business value and the evals itself, making sure we're pushing in the right places is a key aspect.
Thank you, thank you. And Russell, again, this partnership you have is fantastic. So AT&T, largest telco, or one of the largest in the world, you go down this path, data AI. How do you take people on the journey to believe, and how does collaboration then change also between your teams?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question, and it's at a tech conference, it's probably not one that's asked a ton, but it probably should be, right? Because if we think about why projects fail, why programs fail, it's probably not the tech, it's probably the people, right, that don't get on board. And so I think one thing that we've really focused on is, if you think about your average program probably spends 80% of their time building the talk track and the materials to send upward, right? Let me tell my leadership what's going on. 10% of the time is on peers, 10% of the time is on your direct reports. We try and flip that, right? So if we can point to the P&L right away, right, that's all my CFO needs to know about, right, is like, here's the bucket of money we're going after, here's the business case, we'll update you next month, and then I spend all my time working with my peers, working with my direct reports on getting them on board with the change, right? The peers is really important, because to Mark's point on the evals, the accuracy. They need to know that we're going through change and that my service levels are going to be, we may make mistakes because we're trying to iterate, we're trying to improve, and that we're inserting Gen AI into the equation. It's not going to be perfect every single time, but we know that if we look up 6 months from now, we will improve, right, those metrics, whether it's operational metrics like handle time, whether it's mean time to identify, mean time to respond metrics on the actual threat side. So it's getting that stakeholdering across your teams to understand that you're in this iterative and change management phase, and then getting your team on board, right? And this is just huge, right? We found you can't communicate enough, right? We got 3 or 4 layers of people, and I spend time working up and down that chain of command, getting people on board, sending people to Atlanta to go spend time with the product team, bringing people into Plano to spend time with the data science team, sending the data science team out to our centers. We can't spend enough time working with our frontline, our tier 2 support teams, helping them understand how the Gen AI works, how the machine learning models work. We don't need to send them to the training in the right downstairs, the Databricks training. They don't need that. But they need to know, right, who like our data science leader is, right? They need to know who the data, if they're working on fraud in the retail environment, they need to know the data scientists who are building those models so that they can trust them, so that when they see some of those insights show up on their case management system, they don't think it's just a far-off computer generating them, but they know that that model was built, monitored, watched by Edmund, right? He understands, he's been working on it for years, and now we're taking it to the next level by putting that in front of them with the Gen AI summarization. So we spend so much time on the change management, we think it's just paramount to being able to drive adoption on these new technologies, whether it's been machine learning 5 years ago, future stores, and now Gen AI, it's the same playbook.
I'll just add one quick thing. Our teams literally sit right next to each other, right? So I always say data science is a team sport, and you include the business right next to it. And then what's really cool is some of these stories about these ride-alongs, like going to thing. The best way to find new data features that help you predict fraud is to go see what they're actually doing, right? And you find new things. I got to get the data for that. What is that thing, right? It's really cool.
Thank you. So collaboration is the key. And I like the fact that you're kind of sitting next to each other, so you get to also form that team spirit, which I'm sure helps along the journey. Okay, so Emma, one last question for you. 18 months, and you've already seen some amazing successes in the business. What's next, and how are you approaching the next stage?
Yeah, so I think for us, one thing that I think we're really happy about, we've got a really good data foundation now, so we've got a really core base. And the things that, Optus has a really, probably like most organisations, has an ambition to kind of reimagine, reinvent how we run the entire business, kind of leveraging data and AI, and that kind of ranges everything from, putting in use cases for proactive network monitoring for network energy efficiency through to how we do personalisation for customers. But I think the thing that I'm personally the most excited about is the ability to actually do this at scale. So, we've got a really strong data foundation. We're looking at how we build out really strong AI foundation so that we can scale all of those use cases at enterprise grade. So, particularly excited about some of the announcements this morning around Databricks, as I'm like, that's awesome. We don't have to go and build something out separate on the side. Lots of conversations about how many tools we're going to buy. So it's great to know that we can have some that are already there. Also really excited about particularly Databricks' capability around connectors, because obviously lighting up data accessibility across the organisation is huge to actually enable all these use cases to actually work. And for us, like most organisations, really focused on cost. So things like some of the zero copy ETL that have been announced recently around like SAP and Salesforce is really game changing for us. And probably the last one that for me, and it seems like a little one, a lot of people have talked about Genie this week, but Genie is something that's really practical for our execs and our senior leaders to actually go, what does AI really look like in practice? Because I think for a lot of them, it's still something that's kind of out there. They can't quite understand how it works. And Genie is something that we can put in front of them, put it onto data sets that they're used to interacting with through just like Power BI, and actually just letting them loose on actually what it looks and feels like within Optus. So we're really excited about all of those capabilities coming together to be able to scale it across the organisation.
We can't wait to hear from you next year on how all of that has gone. And I must say, Genie has been a game changer for me myself. I'm not a technical person, and I'm working in a company that has lots of data scientists. And I must say, every time I have a silly question, I kind of think, where do I go? And, being able to interact more with insights and information has been quite empowering. So fantastic. And Adam, same with you. Where to next? You've already done some amazing things. Your use cases that I have seen on customer experience and how you've changed the game for many operators is fantastic. What are you thinking as your next steps?
First thinking, I don't know how many of my competitors are in the room, so I need to be a little careful how I answer that question.
It's a friendly place.
Always. So I guess to just give some perspective. So I came from the information services industry and from some of the large consumer reporting agencies that, in a sense, kind of created the space of big data 20, 30 years ago. what I learned from that experience is that you win in that space by having a really large platform, but really thinking about how you leverage that to say something, do something, see something that other people can't see because they're not playing at that scale. So that's important to this because I came to Plume because I saw something similar. We've got over 450 ISPs that we count as customers, 65 million plus locations worldwide. We can see a lot about what's really happening. And when I think about where we're innovating and the strategy that I'm driving within Plume, also a former consultant, so I think about everything in a 2x2 matrix. But one dimension really gets to the shift from data to insights. So I think we've all seen it, like we've seen the reporting tool, the dashboard, that's the wall of levers and dials and stuff. Yeah, we got to get away from that, and we are getting away from that to talking more about insights. We're working on a network observability tool now where instead of, we realize we can't just tell somebody that we've tripped a threshold in the network, we've had too many outages. We've got to look and say, okay, well, we've had a lot of outages, but 100 of these, they're all related to the same CPE. By the way, we pushed new firmware yesterday. So NOC manager, that's probably the issue you should focus on. There's a lot of other noise over here that you should disregard. I think the other thing, and we're at an AI conference, so I can't not plug AI now, is we're looking at that move from reactive to proactive in our solutions. So many times in the customer care space, the answer might be reboot the modem. Okay, that's fine. Right now, the subscriber has to call into the ISP to be told to reboot the modem. And whether they do it themselves or whether we push a button remotely, different conversation. We're looking at agents that can watch what's happening in a network, identify if there's a problem that looks like you need to reboot the modem, and then just send the signal. And obviously the awesome thing about that is that the subscriber should never know that happened and should never call in, and that's a great experience for them. So we're doing all of this right now on our Databricks platform. This is kind of where we see the scale, the flexibility to be able to innovate quickly, but it's all about kind of moving from data to insights and moving from proactive to reactive.
I love it. So getting to predictive,
Yep.
taking action even before, solving a customer issue before they even know about it, I think is one way to really change the dial on NPS in any telco. So thank you so much for sharing that. And Mark, every time you speak, I learn so much, whether it's in a panel or otherwise. What advice might you give everyone else who's going on this journey? Is there one or two things that just stand out from your perspective that would guide us all into what we should be looking for as we, many customers approach the AI journey?
I start with the business problem, right? I think we all start with that and understand the value, and then look at all the tools you have in the toolbox, right? So there's a ton of stuff you're learning at the conference here. It's getting easier and easier, is what I would say. And the other thing that just, if I kind of think of like, where is it going or where would you like to go? All of these things, whether you're troubleshooting a network issue or customer care or fraud, we're building agents now to kind of answer questions, summarize this thing, or answer questions about the account and stuff. I think we're going to move into the world where it's almost like deep research with agents, right? And it feels to me that if we can kind of go for that, it kind of goes back to the eval, right? I kind of know what the result was. I don't know how I got there, but I got all these agents to go off and research and figure out that pattern, right? So to me, it's like, we're doing that for all these things. We have the AI agentic RAN. We're trying to go after troubleshooting. What was the RAN? What was the problem in the wireless network, right? All the same pattern, though, is like going after that. So, but no matter where you're at, you're on the journey, right? You might be just getting exposed of the data. You're getting the Spark thing, or you're building the machine learning. You're doing the SQL analytics. Figure out where you're at on the journey. Implement that next step and go after that. But then go for the one to. Ultimately, these agents are going to help us solve a lot of things, so that's kind of my advice as to what to shoot for afterwards.
Thank you so much. And Russell, one last question for you. What advice would you give the rest of us in terms of, just building on how do you get the network team to work better with the customer-facing team, and how do you get them to work better with the product team? What's your secret to making that happen more effectively?
Yeah, so for us, the shocker answer is it's been Databricks. So, right, we've equipped teams across my team we have technical analysts, right? We're in the tool, we're using it, certainly not data scientists, but talented analysts. Obviously, our data science team uses it. Our network team, right, trying to combat something like social engineering, right? We're literally cutting across operations, supply chain, fraud, product, network, right? It's huge. And so getting all of the teams to work on the same platform to see the same data has sped up our MTTI, or mean time to identify, MTTR, mean time to respond to new schemes, new threats. And there's instances where we've also been able to leverage reuse of existing models, retrain them, pointing them to a new problem, and we've driven ROI that's paid for the model back in days, right? Because of the features that exist in Databricks. And so when our teams are working off of the same data, it builds trust amongst them. My team can start working on what's the fastest path to controlling the issue, whether that's a rule, a policy change, a process change. Meanwhile, the data scientists are working on what are the fastest features that we can get into a model and get it retrained and into production. So that sort of tiered approach to data analytics has been meaningful in terms of our ability to drive lower highs and lower lows, right, on our charts. And if we do that, we'll return good cash to the P&L.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Everyone, please join me in thanking this incredible panel for the practical discussion, for sharing ideas on how to improve what's working well, in some cases what's not working as well, so that we can all evolve and be better as an industry. Emma, Adam, Mark, Russell, thank you very, very much. We don't have time for questions, unfortunately, but we may just hang around for a few minutes. If anyone has a pressing question, please feel free to come to the front after the session. But please join me in thanking everyone.